Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, outsiders and in-betweeners. My name is Cameron Harris, and I'm running for mayor of Chicago in the 2027 election cycle. Tonight, my grandma bought me a pan of fried chicken. What I'm talking about? I've got some rice in here too. I believe that the President of the United States of America, Donald Trump, is currently suffering from a neurologically degenerative disease. I believe this based on the number of people who talk for him at strange times. I recently had been wondering why, people like the Chief of Staff and, Department of War Secretary were talking so much for the president, so publicly, so many open circles, so many diplomatic visits, so much talking. And then they made that Melania Trump recording where I guess I was told, I've never actually watched it. I've never actually heard Melania Trump's voice in my entire life. I believe she's mostly carted out, as a talking showpiece. Most literally in this instance is why I believe that President Trump is suffering from some sort of disease. Because why did Melania make an Epstein speech? Why did Melania make a remark? Because the president was too sick to defend himself. So the staff assumed who better to defend him than his wife? You know what I mean? Who better to say he's not a pedophile than his wife? The problem the staff, the writing team made is that they released the statement at the completely wrong time. They released it at the most inconvenient moment when I felt like no one in the news was actually talking about the Donald Trump-Epstein relation anymore. And then they put Melania up there and literally restarted the conversation again. I look forward to the President Trump and Chairman Xi Jinping meeting in May upcoming. I want to know how much of it will be televised. You know what I mean? Because that's the make it or break it moment when you can really see whether or not someone is suffering from a degenerative issue based on their body language. Because they have a concept called showtime where they can have the mental capacity to hold it together, to have a conversation, to have a doctor's appointment, to have a meeting with the family, to have a news interview for 15 minutes. And then there will be that moment that their eyes glaze over and they forgot why they're sitting in this room. They forgot all the people around them. And there will be a moment where I believe he'll get up, look around the room, and start, just scanning people's faces. Because he doesn't recognize any of you. He forgot all of you. Because in that moment, none of you are Melania. None of you are his wife. And so he keeps searching around the room. He's looking for the way out, but he also doesn't remember where he is, so he doesn't know the way out. So he's got to find Melania again, right? But none of you are Melania. And all of a sudden, he's back at the first person. But he forgot that he doesn't remember you. So he's got to look at your face again, but you're not Melania. And so he just kind of walks around the room until someone escorts him out. I firmly believe that, Sleepy Joe did not move out of the White House. He moved into the White House. I believe someone caught grandpa wandering around Washington, D.C. by himself, and now they keep him locked in a storage closet, terrified that he might embarrass himself publicly on TV or like in a way that they can't hide. Going forward into the future, especially with our upcoming international conflicts, I believe that people will be signing the president's name for him, especially people like, Vice President J.D. Vance and Secretary of War Hegseth, whatever his name is. These people will have the most abuse over the executive branch powers in President Trump's incapacitated state. I've told you all about my Mandarin class trip to China. In 2018, I went on my Mandarin classes trip to China with Mr. Antonetti. And I got this little guy as a souvenir. Here we go. This is like Keelan. He's the Chinese equivalent of a unicorn, I suppose. I don't know any like Taoist or like traditional Chinese folklore, so I can't tell you any stories about him. I think there's a moment where he appears in Journey to the West, with Sun Wukong and Tripitaka the monk. I think there's a point where they meet one of these, but I don't remember. We're using him as the guardian of the mild sauce. That's why he was sitting here. You just couldn't see him. But one place I thoroughly enjoyed is the Summer Palace, which is a frustratingly mind-bending feat of engineering and architecture. In Western culture, we talk a lot about, the Palace of Versailles, and I've never been particularly impressed by it. I understand its expansiveness. I understand the gilding, but I don't think it's interesting. I want all of you to go to China, to go to Beijing, and experience what it's like to be around 23 million people. The city of Chicago has roughly 2.8 million, 3 million people living in it, and it is desolate. It's barren. It's sparse. There's no one in here. It's an empty can you can shake around and hear things clinking. When you go to China and you're walking around Beijing in the daytime, it will feel empty. You'll be walking through these enormous, expansive plazas and these tunnel hallway-like configurations that funnel you from one plaza into a next one. And it'll feel really empty and desolate, and it'll feel slightly uncanny. But you've made the mistake at being there at the wrong time. It's 11 o'clock in the morning on Wednesday. Everyone's at work. There's no one outside. 8 o'clock at night rolls around. Oh my God. There's Chinese people everywhere. I'm talking nuts to butts. Shoulder to shoulder, these expansive arenas, these things that gave you an abandoned stadium-like feeling, are now packed with 8,000 people in here, and they're singing, and they're dancing, and they're having acrobatic performances, and there's people selling food off in the corner, and it's the most jarring thing you'll ever experience, because you'll go to Chase Plaza in downtown Chicago, and first off, it's tiny. It's like, what, like 50 feet by 50 feet? It's not even, it's decorative. It's not even a plaza. You go out in Chicago at 9 o'clock at night, and it's pretty empty for the most part, honestly. But that is the exact opposite of how you would describe cities like Beijing and Shanghai, where, oh my God, when you're in Shanghai, against the sea, they're everywhere. They're on the rocks, they're in the trees, they're on the grass, they're on the railing, they're on the path, there's people everywhere. And it's so, I really need you personally to go to China to experience what it's like to live in a place that's truly been maximized to an efficient capacity. In America, we talk about like overpopulation a lot and like urban density, and it's not true. I promise you, once you experience the feeling of being shoulder to shoulder with 800 strangers just ant pathing their way past and through one another, you'll never again think that there are too many people in the city of Chicago. And then I got off the tour bus to the Summer Palace, and there was a homeless man sitting in front of the tour stop. For those of you unaware, begging is illegal in China. And so, by extension, homelessness and destitution are illegal in China. I don't know what the sign the guy in his lap read, but I do know he had no arms, and that when the authorities came to arrest him, they had to literally pick him up because he didn't have any arms. And then I started looking for other homeless people, like explicitly. Anytime Mr. Antonetti took us outdoors, I was looking for homeless people anywhere I could find them, like under viaducts, in overgrowth, like in buildings I thought looked abandoned. I was looking for homeless people because there's 23 million people in the city of Beijing. Where are the homeless people? Where are the rest of him? And then it occurred to me this year, in the past week, that there's gotta be a homeless encampment of 10,000 people somewhere in the mountains of Beijing, because where else are they hiding? When you make open habitation illegal, they must conglomerate and then hide themselves. When it gets rough weather-wise in Chicago, the homeless people conglomerate. They form those little communities, under the viaducts, by the train tracks, like I say, in abandoned communities, just behind the underbrush, behind that block that's abandoned. There's like a homeless encampment back there. And then you expand that to the entire city of Beijing, but there's so many people in Beijing that you wouldn't be able to find a non-inhabited spot. So they made their own. They left the city and set up an encampment somewhere in the mountains. There's an IKEA sitting in the middle of nowhere in Beijing that you drive past on the way to the Great Wall. And why would it not be just that easy to put a homeless encampment somewhere just on the other side of that mountain on the way to the Great Wall, and you'd have no idea? I suppose I've had a eventful year where I've realized many things. That's unfortunate. There goes the Sauce Guardian, right? This is Beauty and Love by Saya Gallup, 17 something. And I never realized 1 in 100 Americans were Muslim until like last month. I went to Mount Carmel Catholic all-boys school, and one of my classmates, Rahm, was Muslim. And I knew this, I acknowledged this, because when we prayed in class, he didn't. I understood why he didn't pray, because he was Muslim. That was haram for him. I understood that he did not pray with us. But it quite literally never occurred to me that he was Muslim until I read this. And then I realized there was a kid in a couple grades underneath me, Asa, who was Muslim. And Asa's younger brother was Muslim. And all of a sudden, there's one kid in each grade who's Muslim in a school of like 500 kids, 400 kids. 400 divided by 4 is 100. So all of a sudden, 1 in 100 students is Muslim. And it's such a great sample set because we were all just kind of thrown in there together. You know what I mean? Theoretically, no one was forced to be there. And so it is a perfectly reasonable sample size of willing participants showing their identities to me. And that was when I started to like reanalyze, the ethnicities of the people I saw. And it's like 50% white, 30% black, 19% Latino, and it was like 1% Asian and Middle Eastern. And I'm throwing like, Muslims in with the Middle Eastern group. And that was like revolutionary thought to me because I really never considered just generally how many Muslims there were. And this is probably why, like conservative politicians talk about Islam so much, because the government is really the only one who would be aware of these statistics until you look up and say, wait a minute. I was trapped in a building of 500 people and 4 of them were Muslim. And I never thought about that until I bought this book. This book is probably one of the most revolutionary pieces of like Turkish Islamic literature. And I find it to be extremely frustrating. It is so wonderfully written that every few passages I have to like crack open my Bible to figure out the exact nuance of our author's prose, because it is lost on someone unaware and unintelligent like me. I have no idea what it's like to be clay in the potter's hands until you read Genesis. Until you read this, what does the potter say to the one who made it? What makest thou? I don't believe in world peace. So I don't believe there would ever actually be a reconciliation between Islamic faith and like Catholicism or just Christianity generally. I get really frustrated with the like American targeting of like Muslim Islamic communities, because it's like a dramatic unawareness of how many other Christian diaspora exist out there and how different all of us are compared to each other. Have you ever gone to mass with like a Coptic Ethiopian person and seen how the men dress? And you're concerned about a man who's Sikh wearing a turban. You've never even heard of an apostolic Christian or like a Miaphysite. You've never even read about the Nestorians. You know what? I was mind blown when I found out that the Assyrians, people of Ashur, like Nebuchadnezzar and Ashurbanipal, ethnically are still around, first of all, in like Syria. and they're Christian. This is what I mean when I say that, like, the apostolic Nestorian Miaphysite people, they're everywhere and they're still out there and you've never even heard of them, but we're talking about these people that we have, if you read this, very little in common with. I think the concept of God's darkness is so interesting. In Catholic literature, in Catholic sacrament, in Catholic ceremony, especially since Easter has most recently passed, you all saw the image of Christ the Redeemer. Christ standing before you, shining his light upon you in this image. And that is so antithetical to the Islamic belief of standing in God's shadow, in following God's footsteps, in being bathed in his darkness. I had never once considered God's love to be a black, all-consuming kind of love. You know what I mean? Like this. This is the nature of God's love. To understand God's love is to put a blanket over your head in a dark room and to be comfortable, to be warm, to be embraced, to be safe, to be bathed in God's darkness. When Catholics imagine the glory of God, he is before you radiantly. When a Muslim imagines the glory of God, he is behind him in the shadow. Catholic doctrine likes to repeat that God's love is a spectrum of light. But in that Christ the Redeemer photo, where you see that spectrum of light, none of them are black. The darkness is behind Christ purposefully. That is God's love to them. And that is so interesting that 1 in 100 Americans is Muslim, right? Continuing on with my idea that world peace is not achievable. If I am ever invited to the UN, the United Nations, the theoretical organization that hosts a delegate from most nations on Earth, I'm going to force all of the representatives to have a group hug with me. I am not your enemy. But if you refuse to touch me, if you refuse to touch the circle, then you have identified yourself as an enemy against me. And that means that there is room for mediation. I don't believe in world peace. I don't even believe we'll come to a settlement. So I believe I'm the perfect guy to negotiate for all of us. One condition: unconditional surrender to this. The negotiations are live streamed between the three of us. I'm sitting in the middle. Delegate A has a microphone. Delegate B has a microphone, and we all around the world, across the universe and the galaxy, get to hear how fucking stupid we sound. I realized when I was lying in bed one time that if everyone in the world were engaged in a group hug, then nobody would be able to kill each other. But we would also all starve to death, right? Because what are we doing with our arms? So I want to live in a world where we are both not starving to death and not killing each other. So let's have a group hug for 5 minutes and figure everything out together. What is wampum? There's one lady out there who said, "Oh my God, yeah, that's me. You recognize me." What is wampum? Wampum is the Native American gift-giving culture of forgiveness, opulence, and decadence. When you engage with the term wampum, you should imagine Oprah has given you a car. That is the excitement that traditional tribal economics would have put on the value and significance of wampum, of seashell, is you get a car, you get a car, you get wampum. I want wampum. I want a car. In the Chicago Field Museum, wampum is labeled as seashells. And I ask myself, I ask other people, does it matter? Does it matter if it is seashells and not wampum? Does it matter if it is wampum and not seashells? I continue to scratch my brain around this. Because if words do have value, if words do have meaning, if words do have substance, then it matters that they are not seashells. It matters that they are not wampum. And then this calls into regard all other words that we use with little significance in your mind. What is a nigga when you are American? What are seashells when they are wampum? What is a faggot when you are American? What is a gook or chink when you are American? What value do we place on words that we mislabel on purpose? It is ignorant to call seashells wampum in the same way it is ignorant for Black Americans to say nigga, because you are not nigga, you are American. It is not seashells, it is wampum. I've just recently come back to Chicago from living in Forreston, Illinois. And out west, y'all don't do pans of chicken. First of all, that pisses me the fuck off because I miss my pan of chicken. This was 1999. This was a deal at Tony's on 95th. You can't get that out there. The closest large city within like 50 miles is Freeport. And you go to Freeport and you can't get a pan of chicken from anywhere I could find. The largest place you could get it is from Dick Hatch, you know what I'm talking about, out in Rockford, and it ain't $19.99 for 30 pieces and some rice. I'ma just say that. I miss my pan of wings. And this engages with my topic of, can I be wrong about my assumption of if wampum and seashells matter? Does it matter if you are nigga or American? What is food culture, right? Because I have previously claimed food culture did not exist. Because if you lived in the same place with the same access to resource and the same access to food, you would inevitably, incidentally recreate the same recipes. And yet, They can't put chicken in a pan for me. Why is it so hard, y'all? They also don't put sauce on chicken. Like, they'll give you like sauce in a cup. I'm from Chicago. I like Harold's chicken. I want a bucket of sauce dumped on my bird. I want it wet. I want it crispy underneath, and I want it drowning. I don't want a dry chicken sandwich. But I've just recently come back to Chicago, and on my drive here, Illinois 72 to Illinois 2 to I-90 to here, I get to I-90 past Rockford, and I'm pretty much on the outskirts of what I know is Chicago, because I'm starting to recognize a little bit where I am. And it's midnight, it's dark, and then I see a black cloud on the side of the freeway that's high enough at the freeway, but also hanging out at the top stories of the buildings around me. And I'm looking at these clouds as I'm driving past them. I'm sure if you are a trucker, you have noticed these clouds too along I-90. These clouds are smog. That is air pollution. I lived quite a few years out in Foreston, to the point that I suppose I forgot I have ever seen smog clouds before, because I was like, what the fuck is that shit, y'all? It was literally like a cloud of ash and smoke just sitting, seeping slightly onto the highway. I was like, what is that? And then you drive and there's more of them and they just keep popping. And I'm like, is that smog? Because it's midnight, there are no clouds. Is that smog? 100 miles away, communities like Foreston, Leaf River, Mount Morris, Lena, Galena, Dixon, Shannon, Oregon, Mount Morris, don't have access to clean water. 100 miles away, we don't have access to clean air. We're breathing in all the smog clouds I saw on I-90 that literally surround us that we just forgot. It occurred to me that what if I didn't even forget I've never saw one of these? What if they hid them from me? What if they only do this kind of pollution at midnight, hoping you don't catch them? Hoping I'm not driving down I-90 at 2 o'clock in the morning and go, what the fuck is that cloud of ash and smoke sitting there? We keep hearing about all these kids born with asthma and all the acid rain, and I invite you all to travel down I-90 between midnight and 2 o'clock in the morning and just look at the cause of your asthma. Look at the cause of your lung cancer. Look at the cause of your mesothelioma and your OCPD. Just breathing in the city air. I believe the Ukraine conflict is at its tearing point. I believe that once President of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin, has received the unconditional capitulation of the Ukrainian government, he will continue to attack what I will refer to going forward as the European coalition. I would like to formally acknowledge my immediate distrust and disinterest in the nation of Italy and a representative of Alessandra Mussolini. I firmly believe that if an European war were to take place, the Italian government and Alessandro Mussolini will join the Russian Federation against the European coalition. I firmly believe Alessandra is immortally and immaterially angry, to the point that she would betray her own country for the image of fascism, for the memory of her grandfather. She will join the Russian Federation to burn it down, just out of hate. Here is my timeline of events going forwards. Ukraine will capitulate to the Russian Federation. Vladimir Putin will attack the European coalition. Italy will join the Russian Federation in its attack against the European coalition. North Korea will actually invade South Korea at this moment. I am afraid of the candidness with which Representative Kim Jong-un said that he can get his soldiers fighting in Ukraine to commit suicide upon capture, because that is power, right? To get someone 3,000 miles away to commit suicide in fear of repercussions from you 3,000 miles away in the darkness. That is power. It is a small jump from suicide to being a suicide bomber. We saw this with the Japanese and German mindset and fighting ethics in World War II, that you can turn a suicide into a suicide bomber. It's so easy to get a soldier to have a feast with his family, to get one night for the family to kiss their dead child goodbye, to put a bomb vest on that person, to put a Gen or a Dao in his hand, and he will charge the DMZ. He will charge the front line of the Korean border, and he will be glad to do it because his suicide bombing will bring honor to his family and grace to his death. North Korea will invade South Korea, and the Chinese government will be aware, complicit in this. We are currently drawing a direct parallel of criticism between the addition of President Trump's portrait in the passport to Mao Zedong's inclusion in the Chinese national passport. And that is to remind Chinese nationals of upright philosophy, of upright communist constitution with the image of the founder Mao Zedong. And I would argue that Mao Zedong, wanting to always further the revolution internally, constructively, would not want the arming of suicide bombers overseas. We will see a complicit Chinese government through the view of a fellow communist revolutionary government is furthering their borders. Everyone clap. I will not clap for a suicide bomber. America, the United States of America, will begin what I will refer to as the America's Wars. The invasions of, Venezuela, Colombia, Brazil, Ecuador, Peru, Chile, just the surrounding and strangulation of the entire continental South America. And this will cause the governments, and this is, I know you guys are laughing at me at this point, but you gotta chill. I know, right? The governments of Mexico, Canada, and China will actually form a triple alliance to intervene in the America's wars to stop the invasion, to stop all the killing and bloodshed, because we're not going to succeed on any specific war front in neither Brazil, Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, Guyana, any of them. So we will open more war fronts in the hopes that we can outmaneuver our opposition and just push through other countries to snake around the flanks. But that's not gonna work. And so bodies will pile up until our neighbors say, we'll stop it for you. We will see the partition of America. And this is what I have envisioned. It will look like the Man in the High Castle, where China actually has control of the West Coast, Oregon, Washington, California, further area. And then I will be forced to negotiate the surrender of Texas and Oklahoma to the Mexican government in exchange for peace. And the East Coast from New York probably to Georgia or Florida maybe will become the possession of Canada. And that unintegrated fringe middle territory, from Illinois to Louisiana, will be governed by me, the remnants of the most centralized, sophisticated vestige of the American government. In time, you will understand my tagline, everything to everybody. I will be the reason the lights turn on. I will be the reason the grocery store is open. I will be the reason gas prices are cheap. I will be the reason there is a vestige of America to reconnect the whole pieces into one. It is inevitable to me that if America were to be partitioned, we all want our country to come back together. Maybe not in 20 years, but in 100. I would like to make everyone aware that I've said some crazy things this episode, from claiming the sickness and cognitive degeneration of the president to a World War III scenario where I am the last vestige of the American government. And again, I would like to testify inevitably when I'm brought before Congress, inevitably when the FBI kicks open this front door and takes my laptop and notebooks from me, that I don't talk to anybody. There's no one in my laptop or my contacts or email or notebook. I thought of it all myself. We're going to argue about it for hours, but there is no other explanation, and I've been listening the entire time, and you've been talking too much. I have learned so many things from this book. another one. I grew up in the early 2000s. You probably grew up in the early 2000s. You remember seeing all of those child soldiers in those Islamic factions all across Africa. You remember being told about how they were like machete fighting, killing each other, and like, you know, doing like target practice on dead bodies, and they were like being forced to eat human flesh. And then one day in 2015, somewhere around, I just stopped hearing about those kids, right? You did too. And I always wondered, where did those kids go? And then I read this book, In the Belly of the Hyena, by Niga Mislekic. He joins the revolutionary government to walk into the mountains, into the shrubland, to get yelled at by people he doesn't know, to watch the person he does know get shot to death, and then he walked home. And that is the answer to where all of those little African kids in those Islamic caliphate terror groups went. They caught the bus home after 4 years in a prison camp of machete fighting each other and eating people. He walked back home to the faces that recognized him, to the faces that knew what he did. And what do you do when everyone knows you're that kid who's been gone for 5 years because you ate somebody? Because you were killing people, not willingly, but you did. And that's how they'll always look at you, because what the fuck? Where did you go? What the fuck? It's in this book. What is a single event operator? We are witnessing the evolution of modern warfare as we speak. We are seeing the inefficiency of boots on the ground, of soldiers and tanks and airplanes and cannons and boats and drones. None of these seem to be effective. The most effective attacks we can all think of are personal, right? The biggest attack in American history was 9/11, and that was committed by a few singular people, a few single event operators. The future of warfare is state-sponsored terrorist attacks, where the governments of America, of Russia, of Brazil, of China, of Germany, of France, of Japan will send highly trained singular people into a city to collapse parking garages, blow up a movie theater, and then one day they will walk into a train station. They will walk into Willis Tower wearing a bomb vest and say, "Surrender the city to my government, or I'm going to blow this building up." You have failed to catch my other destructive attempts thus far. You will not catch the other operators. You have failed to stop a single event. I am a single operator with a single detonator. You will hand over a single city. The future of warfare lies in who can find all of those little Islamic Sultanate kids fastest, because he's got a whole lot of training and not a lot to live for, right? He wants a plane ride out of there, out of his misery. How much money do you think he just wants to leave his family to go blow up the Willis Tower, to be the future of warfare? It's a race. I don't have any developed thoughts yet on the concepts of religious authority, but I believe it is interesting to see a different sort of Christianity emerging in Texas. And I dread one day, fear one day, that there will be a book I refer to as the Texas Bible, in the way that we had the King James Bible, who was someone wealthy and powerful enough to just pay and propagate and disseminate their version of the Bible. I live in fear of a collective or conglomerate of billionaires in Texas creating their Texas Bible, and these sort of awful images and hate that would be in a book that is antithetical to my idea that you have rights, not because of the law or because of the strength of the law or your ability to defend them, but because God said so. We will see the writing of a book where no one has rights or all is hated because God said so. When does Ramadan end? I don't know. I remember reading somewhere, I might be just misconstruing the wrong ceremony, but Ramadan ends at a particular portion of the moon cycle. I believe it is like set up to something in the moon. And a couple years ago, the Saudi government personally tried to determine the end date of Ramadan. And I might not know a lot about Ramadan, but I do know about the caliph and the idea of the caliphate, and that the only person to decide the end of Ramadan is the caliph. And it is some bold political maneuvering to do the job, the office of the caliph, without the name of the caliph. Because you are afraid of the criticism, of the obvious, that people do not see a Saudi prince as their caliph to determine Ramadan. And so you hide and announce it through the news, through the state media, that we say Ramadan is over. Not the caliph, but we, the cowards. Too afraid to say you are caliph, but strong enough to say you think you know when Ramadan ends. the Texas Bible, and the Caliph. I have a spit, don't touch me, and kill list, where if I were to be in the room with these people, I would either immediately spit on you, not allow you to touch me, or I would become irrationally, uncontrollably violent, and you would have to kill me to stop me from hurting you. Monarchs are between my spit and kill list for reasons of the Saudi princes in the UAE. We fought a civil war to get rid of slaves. I will kill a king to free his slaves. If I were ever to be in the room with a ceremonial monarch or assumed ceremonial monarch, someone who is powerless but taken care of by their state, someone who doesn't have $5 to their name but gets driven around, gets the toothpaste placed on their toothbrush, and gets a televised wedding, I will spit on you. Do not think you could even make eye contact with me or be in my room. Do not assume to shake my hand. You will meet wetness. I will spit on you. You are disgusting to me. You are monstrous. I am Catholic. No kings but God. No lords on earth but Christ. You are abomination. I will spit on you to spare the diplomatic incident of murder. I will kill you to free slaves. I will spit on you because you do not have any. Do not touch me. Men like Secretary of War Hegseth cannot touch me because they are pathetic. You have infidel tattooed on your body. I explain to the Taliban and Islamic terrorist societies why you cannot exist, and I do it from a place of knowledge. You are so insecure of the threat you pose to other people, you feel you have to display it to them. They would see me, know me, hate me, and it is fear, because that is power. 3,000 miles away, my laptop trembled a government, and you put a tattoo on your body because you have nothing to say. What is a tribes person? Why do the governments of Iraq, Syria, Afghanistan, Botswana, Uganda, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Pakistan, why do they suffer from attacks? What is a tribes person? What is Islam to a tribes person? When you read the Epic of Gilgamesh, when you meet Enkidu the Wild Man, become aware of Sumerian civilization existing in Persia, in Mesopotamia, in Babylon, become aware that the tribespeople in the governments of Iran and Afghanistan are Enkidu, the wild man, without Islam. What separates Enkidu, the wild man, from Gilgamesh is a lack of law, a lack of productivity, a lack of purpose, a lack of hospitality, a lack of Islam. Have you read the Quran? Are you aware that it is not only a religious text, but also has laws around hospitality and manners and law? All of a sudden, people who existed in fringe outside tribal states for thousands of years that had no centralized concept of law got a book on the Silk Road in the mail one day that came with a set of laws, a set of manners, a set of rules and hospitality that you as a Muslim had to be aware of, that you could not plead ignorance of the law. You are a worshiper of Allah, right? You know what is haram. You've read the Quran. You know the punishment. You know the law. And all of a sudden, people who 2,000 years ago were Enkidu and Gilgamesh have a book of law. And it showed up on their doorstep. When you're watching law and politics and crime shows, and you're in that judge's room and the lawyer's office, and there's all those red books up on the wall, that is distilled into the nature of the Quran, and you as a Muslim had to have read it, right? Third world countries are not examples of Syria or Iraq or Persia, Iran. Because of who these people have always been, how is it that the Phoenicians, the Syrians, the Babylonians, the Iraqi, the Persians, the Iranian have become third world? You flip on the news and you see bombed out buildings, and they claim that is a third world country. You flip on the news and you see countries like Uzbekistan and Turkmenistan and Botswana and Uganda, and they are third world countries. But they do not have bombed out buildings. Rather, they have places buildings have never stood. A third world country is not a place that was once the home of an empire, a bastion of civilization. A third world country is not a place with bombed out buildings on a TV. A third world country is a place where a building has never stood. What makes a tribesperson is to live in places empires never conquered. What are the Adal? What are the a picture is worth 1,000 words, and I can't remember the words. I'll show you a picture. Who are these people to you? That right here is the flag of South Sudan. I probably severely mistaken, and I should probably keep my mouth shut, but I believe those are the Dinka people. And it's so hard to get a job when you have no phone. And it's hard to get a phone when you have no job. And what is money to a tribesperson? T-Mobile does not accept tilapia as a payment plan for a cell phone. How do tribespeople leave the fringe of society? A third world country is a place that has had 2,000 years of continuous human habitation, and they have not managed to build anything, any empire out of it. A third world country is a place where people have always left historically. The peoples of Uzbekistan and Turkmenistan and Mongolia left. And that was the point. That was the great Khan's journey. His mission was to leave Mongolia. Turkey exists because people left Turkmenistan. Turkey is Turk-I. Turki. Turk-E. Turkistan. Pakistan. Turkey of the Turkish people. They left to go found a better empire. Why do people always invade India and Pakistan from Afghanistan? Because people have lived there for 2,000 years, and going all the way back to Ashoka the Great, they have not been able to make habitation there successful. And so they left to go found other Indian sultanates, to go do what Ashoka the Great undid. The modern problem is now you are trapped in a third world country. We no longer have a system of like I'll eat my words. I'll take you. You ask, where do I go? And for 2,000 years, you said maybe India, maybe Turkey, maybe South Africa. Come to Chicago. I got a lot of jobs cooking up. I'm gonna need a lot of people. how many people is a desalination plant worth in Iran? I think the conflict in Iran is interesting because there isn't a conflict in Iran. The capital city of Tehran has water rationing. They quite literally cannot get enough water to their citizens of the capital city, but we think they can get enough gasoline to put in a navy and blockade straits or sail to America or fight back? They can't even get water, y'all. Every time they show us tanks being blown up and ships being sunk, they're not moving because they can't get gasoline. They can't even get water, y'all. How do they get diesel and gasoline into these vehicles? They don't. There is no conflict in Iran. I am of the idea that the US government killed the supreme leader of Iran. When that missile struck Ayatollah, he was in the city in an armored car with a general, and they said, "Oh my God, look, Ayatollah, an American missile." And he said, "Oh!" Bang. In that 30 seconds, someone in that car with him shot the supreme leader. And the fact that it took such a long time for the central government to present the current supreme leader represents a disagreement behind the scenes of the generals who were complicit in the assassination to put him up there. And currently, there's a secret civil war we're not hearing about where generals are killing each other one after another to see who's going to be the next supreme leader, to see who's going to be the one to kill that guy. When this guy dies, the next leader of Iran will be a general you have not heard of, but someone in the United States government has met before, because that man shot Ayatollah. That man shot Ayatollah's son, the supreme leader now. Be aware, that man was a turncoat when we found him. He killed his government leader. We will not be surprised when he starts killing civilians or other nationals of the country, because he was a turncoat when we found him.
We lost the plot. We as Democrats nationally, from Latinx to defunding the police to police organizations are all racist,
This is
to
such
bringing a set of cultural wars to our schools. You know, any parent, they said, not all, but close to 99% of the parents will send their
That Rahm Emmanuel interview was so interesting to me. for many reasons. We'll start at the end and work our way forwards. My favorite part of the interview is actually the end, when the interviewer shows that he didn't listen to anything Rahm Emmanuel said in the entire interview. Over the course of the interview, Rahm Emmanuel is very explicit in his language that he is first, foremost, primarily, ultimately, only an American citizen trying his best to represent American citizens. And then this guy, drowning in his ignorance, brings up Rahm Emmanuel's middle name being Israel and his last name being Emmanuel in relation to his uncle being killed in the Arab Revolt. Rahm Emmanuel doesn't give a fuck about Israel. Rahm Emmanuel spent the previous 7 minutes of this video specifically trying to get into your head that he is American only. There is a polite sort of seething anger that I find to be absolutely hilarious that drips out of Rahm Emmanuel in the last minute of the interview, where he's very politely trying not to yell at you, because how do you not understand that his name was given to him, that his father took the name Emmanuel and they gave it to him, that his father took the name Israel and they gave it to him? Rahm Emmanuel didn't choose any of those things about him. Rahm Emmanuel doesn't give a fuck about Israel, or respectfully, the fact that his uncle was killed in the Arab Revolt. Rahm Emmanuel gives a fuck that you think that he's not an American citizen in that moment. And that made him really angry. And I liked that. What is advocacy? I incorrectly thought that it would be a lawmaker or political leadership's goal to legislate or advocate for a fringe or endangered, threatened community. And Rahm Emmanuel says that that mindset lost the plot. And that's on one hand. On the other hand, I have another thought, that the best form of advocacy is to actually do it yourself, right? If you want a wheelchair ramp up the Capitol building, the way to do it is to take your senator's job and to build it. Not to chain yourself to the door or glue yourself to the floor. No, it's come and take it, right? Come and take his gun, come and take his job. Advocate for yourself. So Rahm Emmanuel is right. You should not advocate for yourself. I am some crazy guy on the internet running as an independent candidate in my local Democratic Republican election. You should advocate for yourself and run in your own and become your own democratically elected Republican candidate. Advocate not for them, but for you. I think you should have a wheelchair ramp, but maybe I don't care enough. You want a wheelchair ramp, come and take it. How did we lose the plot, Mr. Emmanuel? Why is ambassador to Japan a demotion from chief of staff? We lost the plot because you got on a plane to Japan. You stopped being a voice of reason. You left Chicago to go be chief of staff. Sure. That's an upgrade. Sure. And then you got demoted to ambassador, put on a flight where no one could even hear you. And you say we lost the plot because you stopped talking. You left town, Rahm. Mr. Emmanuel, you left. I want you to be alderman for me. In my notebooks is the name of one alderman I don't like. I believe he is Ward 27. He wants to remove the dollar stores from his neighborhood. I live in Chicago. I can walk to your ward, actually. Did you know that? I can walk around and count how many blocks it is from where I started to where a grocery store is. And I can say that was too fucking far to walk. And that the only reasonable places to walk to get fresh produce are the dollar stores that you want to close. Dollar General, Family Dollar. How dare you create desertification in an environment I am trying to fix? Maybe we've lost the plot, but that man is also playing a very bad, out-of-tune instrument, and I want him out of my act. I want you off my band. Mr. Emmanuel, it seems I have a job for you. If we've lost the plot, come yell at us. I love yelling at people on the internet. I want more competition, actually. I beg you all to run in your local democratic process. I want to see 100 people's names on the ballot so I can step over all of you. Because everything to everyone is to be unobstructed, unopposed. Chakravartin is one who moves unobstructed. I enjoy the competition because it is good for me, not because I will lose. I think competition is good for other people. This is fun for me. I love to race. Now we are racing. We are running. Run for alderman. I say that the lost plot is SexCon. You say the lost plot is incorrect advocacy. Advocate for people. I will bring us more than Exotica. My husband is out there somewhere. Hello, Douglas. Or Chip. I believe that be not afraid does not define the appearance of the angels, but the guidance of the Lord. You know what I mean? Be not afraid of the appearance of the angel. Be not afraid of what it will show you, of what you are being asked. I am going to die at the age of 67, standing on a balcony, waving to somebody, and I'm going to be shot through my right eye. Be not afraid. I firmly believe God showed me how I will die in my dream. I also believe God introduced you to my husband. He's like, I say he's like 6 feet tall. He's actually 5'10". He's got the most beautiful, I can see you right there actually. That kind of freaked me out. Did y'all see that too? Anyway, beautiful like blonde hair, like down to his like calf or ankle. And he's from Ireland, like Northern Ireland. And he tries to hide his accent by faking an American accent, but most of his coworkers are just too polite to tell him that he doesn't sound like an American they've ever heard. They just kind of go with it. Because why not? He's nice enough. We're going to meet on a plane. I don't know if you're the pilot or a stewardess. I see you standing on the left side of the plane, like right there looking at me. And I'm just going to ask you to marry me. What is HaysCode? HaysCode is the 1930s screen association, screen guilds, rules around what could and could not be shown appropriately on visual media of the time, in movies of the time, about how you could not depict, sexuality or types of white hate, white racism. And it is interesting to me that we have always actually had laws around the integration and visibility of LGBTQ identity. And yet we have absolutely nothing about the deployment, use, data logging, implementation, research, anything of AI. You know what I mean? We are all so scared of AI right now, and we're still talking about LGBTQ politics for some reason, because we always have. Somehow we have always had LGBTQ laws, and so we will never have AI laws. I would like to remind everyone that Johnny Steam Engine died to remind you that you would always be replaced by a machine. That was the point of him dying against the steam engine. That no matter how hard he worked, no matter how he swung that pickaxe, how many rocks he unburied, how wide that hole he dug might have been, that machine worked long after he died. Inevitably, a machine is always supposed to replace you. AI is going to replace you in the same way the steam engine replaced Johnny digging the tunnel. And yet we've had laws about queer people older than the steam engine, laws about visual media older than AI, and we're still clamoring for the same kind of protections. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, outsiders and in-betweeners. My name is Cameron Harris, and I am running in the 2027 election cycle. I hope to see you outside very soon, Douglas. Have a good night, everyone.